some of my opening when he talked about how Santiago and I met in Vancouver at Simon Fraser when he was finishing and defending his dissertation. I entered the room as an external reader of the dissertation, and when Santiago entered the room, I don't remember him saying anything to the four of us who were in the room, but he began tacking up photocopies of pictures. And by the time he had finished covering 3 walls, he sat down so that we could have this defense. And I don't think it was my idea that the only 2 qualified people in the room were he and I. I think it was his idea. So he may have transmitted to me telepathically, but in any case, I was saying what he needed to have said in that room. Now, Santiago has left us many, many kinds of instructions, and will continue to do so for many years. I recently read an instruction that is useful. I think it was a blog that he wrote. He said, the racialization of class precedes African slavery. Now, one of the things that I tell my students is that would be obvious if they paid attention to the language. In the 17th century on, these Africans who were transported to the Caribbean, to Latin America, to North America, were called Slavs. That's what slavery refers to. It refers to the term, the ethnic term, Slav. So an African slave is an African who is being treated as if he or she were a Slav. And what does that mean in historical terms? Remember, Santiago said, racialization of class precedes African slavery. Well, one of the lessons I draw from that is, in effect, the moment that I try and depose as the moment of the invention of black and white peoples. I place it in the 17th century. And it moves in a counterintuitive way. It moves from the West Indies and North America to Europe. That is the invention of white and black. Now imagine, if you will, historical, cultural moments in which white and black people did not exist. There was no need then for the history of white people, no need for the history of black people, because neither was disposed in those terms. Now let me cut back to the Slav. In the Middle Ages and later, Slavic people were so routinely employed as human property in humans, that their ethnic name became synonymous with the condition. The Greeks had no slavery. They had doulos. The Romans had no slavery. They had servus. But in the Middle Ages of the European subcontinent, peninsula, in the Middle Ages of that, the Slavic people became over and over again victimized in this way. So in all the Western European languages, Slavic ethnic identity appears. In the Spanish, esclavos. in French, éclair. It goes on and on and on. It is so deeply embedded that in parts of Spain, Slav refers to chains. So the racial construction of class precedes African slavery, precedes that moment when Africans could be referred to as Slav. Now let me leap a few hundred years and take you to another cultural moment that's critical, I think. I'm currently teaching a course on race and film, and as my book on race and film starts in the 17th century, let me take you through that journey just quickly and momentarily. Shakespeare produced two major works in which Moors appeared. One in the 1590s, called Titus Andronicus, and one in 1604 called Othello. Most of you are familiar with Othello. I draw my students' attention to this period and this moment because there is a contest in Shakespeare's Othello between the Negro, who's not yet there in the imagination, the African Slav, who's not yet there in the English imagination. But Shakespeare could feel comfortable in the notion that he could produce before his audience a noble black man, a valiant black man, a black man with fortitude, a black man whom the Venetians would turn to command their army, to command their navy, to command their military in the war against the Turks. "90 years later, the same theatrical culture would determine that Shakespeare's Othello could not be seen as a major tragedy because it is based on an absurdity. Between 1604 and the 1690s, something had happened to the costuming of Africanness in the English imaginary. So that's a quick journey through that, and it involves my implicating another ethnic group, which might very well have replaced, or might very well have substituted for Africans in modern history. The most acute, robust, and demeaning racialization among the English in the 17th century was not the African, but the Irish. At the end of the 16th century, one prominent English writer suggested what the English agenda should be in Ireland. Start in the north and kill everyone as you move south. In the 1640s, the most authoritative lords wrote about the necessity of killing Irish women.